Have you heard of the Hat Man? Used to have sleep paralysis every night for years as a kid. He and the shadow people made appearances often. The hag, too. Any time he was present, there was an air of authority about him. Not that any of them ever spoke, but it was just something you could feel. Sometimes he would just stand in the doorway and watch as I was tormented by the others, and, if this sounds weird, if he was there without the hag or the shadow people, he would just do sprints up and down the short hallway just outside my door. One time I woke up and there was one of them peeking at me from the side of my bed inches from my face. Only things visible was their head. Void black, silhouette, looked like they had scraggly fur all over them, and their eyes were so wide and white I swear they didn't have any eyelids. Facial expression was the most terrifying ear to your smile. Teeth and eyes both whiter than anything I've ever seen. I swear they almost glowed in the dark. Pretty sure they were related in some way, but not certain because it happened again in a different part of the house while I was sleeping in my parents' bed. Except that time it was the clearest image of a human man. His gray, scraggly hair was generally the same shape as the fur, but he was definitely human-looking. I can see him clear as day in my head RN. He looked sickly and homeless. I obviously started screaming and clambering away from that side of the bed, waking up my parents, and he was gone. My brother slept on the outside edge after that, and admitted to me a couple of weeks ago that he saw him that night too, but never wanted to say anything. He described him perfectly. Scary shit, dude. I once was in a hotel in Italy. I went there all alone, and the first night I tried to sleep in my room, something started happening. As I was laying in bed and slowly falling asleep, someone would knock at my door. It knocked, and I heard the voice of my mom saying, "CR, open the door." I looked up against the door in fear and thought, no way, that can't be my mom. Because she wasn't in Italy at all? I was shocked, but I tried to go back asleep, without responding or standing up. So it starts knocking again, and I look up at the door again. "CR, open the door." My mom with a very sad voice. It was frightening and my heart would pump. I decided to stand up and walk slowly to the door. There was a peephole in that door, and I watched through. Across the hallway I saw this black figure with a black hat, just standing still in the shadow and watching me. No face to be recognized. I stepped slowly back and went back to bed. Much more things would follow, before I finally fell asleep. But when I woke up in the morning and walked to the door, I would realize that there was no peephole in that door at all. I was freaked out, because I was 100% sure that I was awake when all those things happened last night. It was a typical Friday night, and I was excited to finally get some rest after a long week of school. As I drifted off to sleep, I suddenly woke up to a strange feeling of paralysis. I couldn't move my arms or legs, and I felt like I was trapped in my own body. That's when I noticed a figure standing at the foot of my bed. It was a man wearing a dark hat, and he had a sinister presence that filled the room. I couldn't see his face, but I knew that he was staring at me with cold, unfeeling eyes. As I struggled to move, the man began to approach me slowly, step by step. His movements were jerky and unnatural, like he wasn't really human at all. My heart raced with fear as he drew closer and closer, until he was standing right beside my bed. That's when I saw his true form. The man with the hat was no longer a man at all, but a demon in human form. His skin was pitch black, and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly fire. He had no face, just a gaping hole where his features should have been. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I was trapped in my own body, helpless to defend myself against this demonic presence. The demon leaned in closer, and I could feel his cold breath on my face. Just when I thought it was all over, the paralysis suddenly lifted, and I was able to move again. I bolted upright in bed, gasping for breath and drenched in sweat. The man with the hat was gone, but the memory of his terrifying presence lingered on. From that night on, I was always afraid to go to sleep. I never knew when the demon would return, and I felt like I was living in a constant state of fear. It took me years to get over that experience, but I never forgot the horror of that fateful night. I was a teenager, and in my early 20s, university, I had quite a lot of unexplained experiences. I didn't have anyone to guide me on how to hone my sensitivities, so I think I was left open to be vulnerable. Among other things, I was often visited in dreams/visions by the so-called Hat Man. I always understood him to be not of God. Not Satan himself, but definitely something coming from that realm. I had a few encounters with him, no face, just a dark silhouette with a hat and overcoat, and often accompanied by small demons.